Good afternoon. It is Friday and it is time for our lunch and learn. I think I'm just a slight minute before noon and it's been a busy day. I did not even post a sneak peek today. So anyway, you don't even know what I'm going to talk about. But I read this article. I actually read this article before I went on vacation last week. So if you follow us, and by the way, we have a new Instagram account now. So it's called Abundant Health 323, I think is what it's called. So you can follow us on Instagram. So I read this article before we went on our vacation. We were closed July 4th and July 5th because I just needed a break. And this is something that we may inherently know, but this is some new research that came out. Now, just to give you full disclaimer, I grew up on the lake. And that means that we actually lived on the San Jacinto River. And my dad had a boat, and we would go out in the boat every weekend that was possible. And one of his favorite things to do was to water ski on Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day and New Year's Day. So despite the weather, we were always out on the water. And we also had a pool. We had a backyard pool. When we, the last house that my dad built for us, it had an indoor swimming pool. So we were in the water all the time because I'm just a water rat. I love the water. And so knowing that and being out in nature, and one of the things that I get Steve to do for me is I get him to take me out on the lake in the boat because it just really restores my soul to be on the water. So I know intuitively that if I get outside, if I walk, if I go on the water, if I swim, then I am just in a good place. So this past weekend, we went to visit some friends that live in Washington State. And if you follow us, you may have seen some mountain pictures and that kind of thing. The weather was brilliant. Her outside was brilliant. She lives in the mountains, and there were birds and trees and flowers and all those kind of good things. So I just wanted to, I thought it was kind of ironic that I had read this article and I wanted to discuss this with you, and then I go on vacation and I'm actually living the dream. And so I just want to share all of this with you. So this is an article that shows how nature rewires your brain. And who of us do not need to have a little bit of rewiring in the economic climate, the political climate, the social climate that we live in? When, you know, everything is instant gratification, it can be very stressful. And so we need to unplug and we need to be able to de-stress. So nature improves our brain and brings added urgency to the call of serving natural spaces, both urban and wild, okay? So the first thing, being in nature decreases stress. Now, of course, we all need to be stress-free. It is clear that hiking and any physical activity can reduce stress and anxiety, but there's something about being in nature that seems to augment those aspects, okay? I have to turn the page here. So, one recent experiment conducted in Japan, the participants were assigned to walk either in a forest or in an urban setting. Now, in an urban setting, that would be like when we would go down to the mall and we would walk in the mall, okay? So we think that walking is walking. We get our heart rate up, we get our limbs moving, we get that lymphatic fluid moving, and all of that is good. Exercise is exercise, but for your brain, exercising in the wild is a good thing. And that brings me to a funny story I read in the paper. I read somewhere today that there is a nude beach right here in Porter, Texas. I had no idea. Did y'all know that? That is really getting out in the wild. So I'm not advising us to go that close to nature, but I've lived in this area all my life and I had absolutely no idea. So I hope that gives you a little chuckle there. So the results showed that those who walked in the forest had significantly lower heart rates and higher heart variability rates, indicating less stress and more relaxation. and reported better moods, less anxiety than those who walked in the urban settings. Now, we've talked about the heart rate variability monitor. I've shown you that on the screen. If you are interested in that and you haven't seen that, then go ahead and go to our go look in the YouTube channel and find out where it says heart rate variability. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to have a variable time between the R spikes in the EKG. Okay, so when you go and you see your doctor and you get an EKG, it's telling you how the heart is, what the beat is, and all that kind of stuff. Well, and it's very, very technical. You have R waves and P waves and M waves and all those kind of things that if you're not a cardiologist, you're not going to get. But just understand that with the heart rate variability monitor, it counts the seconds or the nanoseconds between the R to R waves. The more variable the numbers, so if you're like all over the place, that means your heart is very good. Your heart is able to respond to stress better than someone who is just static. So when you see that on the heart rate variability monitor, if you're very, very flexible, your numbers are going to look like a wave, like a rolling wave, and that's what you want. If you're very static, you're going to look like a straight line, and that's not what you want. So not talking about your EKG, so don't kind of y'all get confused here. This is a different measurement. It's the measurement between the R waves, okay? So what this is finding is that when you go out and you walk in the forest or in a field, in a meadow, anywhere out in nature, it relaxes your heart and your heart is better able to deal with stress. What causes a heart attack? Besides clogging of the arteries, okay? Hopefully none of us have that. What causes a heart attack is fear. What causes a heart attack is stress. And so if you don't have that fluidity, then you're gonna get really, really stressed, and that's gonna cause you to have heart issues. We don't want you to do that. In another study, this is in Finland, it found that urban dwellers who strolled for as little as 20 minutes through an urban park or woodland reported significantly more stress relief than those who strolled in the city center. So it does matter where you walk. Now, we're not saying don't walk if you can't go outside and walk. Walking is good. It is better for your brain. It is better for your stress. It is better for emotional release if you're able to do it out in nature as opposed to doing it in an urban setting. Okay? There is a classic laboratory experiment right here at Texas A&M. Okay? So colleagues and participants first viewed a stress-inducing movie and then were exposed to color and sound videos depicting natural scenes. They showed a much quicker and complete recovery from stress than those who just saw beautiful pictures in a city or in a natural setting there, okay? So that's something that's important to know. So whether anything that you can do to change your environment so that you're looking at pretty pictures. I know when I come in the morning and I turn on my computer, I have this beautiful vista, some exotic place in the whole world, and I look at that and I think, oh, that'd be nice to go there. So that's a much better picture for my brain than to have something that has to do with work or has something to do with a city center. So that's really, really important. So this is our own University of A&M here in Texas, okay? Nature makes you happier and less brooding. Now, what is brooding? Brooding is when you are worried. Brooding is when you are concerned. Brooding is when you just don't have that inner peace, okay? So this is the study. This study was done in 2015, and this Dr. Gregory Bratman of Stanford University. Okay, so he and his colleagues randomly assigned 60 participants to a 50-minute walk, either in a natural setting in the woodlands or in an urban setting, walking along a 4-lane road. Well, who wants to walk around a road, okay? Who wants to do that? Before and after the walk, I skipped a page here, sorry. Let me see, where was I going with that? Oh, here, I didn't skip a page. I'm so sorry. Before and after the walk, the participants were assessed on their emotional state and on cognitive measures. This is how well the brain is working, okay? Such as how well they could perform tasks requiring short-term memory. Results showed that those who walked in nature experienced less anxiety, less ruminated attention on the negative aspects. So what is rumination? Rumination is what a cow does. A cow chews the cud, it ruminates, that's what it does. It chews it, of course it swallows it, it throws it back up, it chews it some more. That's rumination. Humans, when they ruminate, they worry. They play the what if game. They play the, oh, if I hadn't have done. They play the woulda, coulda, shoulda, which none of that is very, very beneficial to us, okay? So the people that were walking, or they assessed them on this, and they compared these people who walked in the forest with people that walked in an urban setting. The people that walked in the forest had much better cognitive, much better short-term memory, and much less rumination on negative. Why? Because they're focusing on the positive. They're focusing on how pretty that tree is, or, oh, did you see that squirrel that went by, or, oh, did you see the bunny, or the deer, or the tarantula, or whatever you're seeing out there, okay? So this is the kind of thing that needs to happen. It says they improved their performance on their memory tasks. In another study, okay, they extended the findings by zeroing in on how the walking in nature and the rumination, which had been associated with the first test, was associated with depression and anxiety. Now, if I could tell you that I never saw anybody with anxiety, I would be lying. I see people with anxiety every day. So if you go out and you walk, or yes, Renee, if you go out and you bike ride in nature, it helps everything. And so in the second part of the study, they did an MRI to look at brain activity. The participants who took a 90-minute walk in their natural setting or in an urban setting then had their brain scanned before and after their walks. They were surveyed on their rumination levels as well as other psychological markers. The researchers controlled for other potential factors that would influence the rumination or brain activities. For example, physical exertion levels were measured by heart rates and pulmonary function, so that is your lungs, okay? Even so, the participants who walked in natural settings versus those in urban settings reported decreased rumination after the walk, and they showed increased activity in the oh, you're going to get me saying these words, some prefrontal cortex, okay? All areas of the brain whose deactivation is affiliated with depression and anxiety. So basically what they're saying, when they measured the brain by the MRI before and after, that prefrontal cortex, so that's here, and this is a sub part. I can't say this word, so it must be underneath somewhere. Anyway, it must be, according to this, related to depression and anxiety. And they found that the people who walked in the urban settings or rode their bike or hiked or swam or whatever they did, okay, in a woodland setting, did much, much better than those who just went down to the mall and walked for the sake of walking. Now, I've never been a mall walker, and I think if I had to go to the mall to walk because it was too cold or too wet or whatever, to me it would just be a check off on the list just to tell you that I did it. But for me to be able to go out in nature and walk with a friend and experience the breeze and experience the flowers and all that kind of thing, it's just a much better deal, and it's not checking off my list. I wish I could do that way, way, way more often, okay? So nature relieves attention fatigue and it increases creativity. Now, I don't know who needs to have their creativity increased, but I think most of us would say that we would volunteer for that. So today, it says today, we live with ubiquitous technology. And what that means is that we are always connected to something, okay? So when you get out in nature, hopefully you leave your phone at home or you turn it off. I know you have children and spouses and that kind of thing. You can make a priority alert so you're only alerted when you need to be alerted and you don't get that constant ping, ping, ping. I'll just tell you, with my cell phone, I don't have any alerts on my phone because it drives me absolutely crazy. My children are able to get through. My spouse is able to get through. My office is able to get through if I happen not to be sitting at my desk. But if you're not one of those people, you're pretty much on mute. And I do that as a self-preservation, because when technology is just pinging me to death all day, it's just not good for my mental state. Okay, so I'm gonna keep on reading here. Some people like to know what I think, so they've asked me, well, what do you think? Well, that's what I think. All right, many scientists believe our brains were not made for this kind of information bombardment, and it can lead to mental fatigue, being overwhelmed, and being burnt out that requires attention restoration to get back to a more normal and healthy state. Researchers say that he believes that being in nature restores the depleted attention circuits, which can then help us be more open to creativity and problem solving. Now, I will just tell you, and I have seen this, we go to church every Sunday, most Sundays, and we go out to eat, and we don't look at our cell phones when we're together at a restaurant. Why is that? Because I want to spend the time face to face. I look around and I see parents with children. We'll say there's 2 parents and 2 kiddos. Everybody's on their own individual personal device. Nobody's talking to each other. You know, when my kids were small, the dinner table was a place where we would reconnect. It was a place where we would discuss issues. It was a place, we would have the family meetings, but we'd also ask the kids, how was your day? What was going on? What did you learn? And all that kind of stuff. It was also a time where we discussed manners. It was, this is what we're going to do. This is our plan. And so if everybody's just sitting around the table with their devices, they're going to have attention burnout. So mindfulness, and we've talked about mindfulness. Mindfulness is where you are in the moment, and I want to be in the moment. If I'm able to take time out of my day and be with you, then I want you to take time out of your day and be with me. Put your device away. Talk to me. Be with me. Let's be with nature or whatever, and that gives that full accounting there where you are absolutely present, and that's what needs to happen. It says, and I do believe this, when you use your cell phone to talk, text, shoot photos, and whatever else you can do with your cell phone, you're tapping into the prefrontal cortex and causing reductions in cognitive resources. So moms with little children, pull out that paper. Pull out those pens, pull out those crayons, and let those children develop their creativity. And if you are grown, and this is something that I've said before, and I do try and do, I don't do it as often as I need to, but do Bible journaling or adult coloring or something that is low tech so that you're able to reignite that creativity. Because you know what? When you have creativity reignited, then you can really hear from the Holy Spirit. You get these great ideas that you may not be able to hear if you're constantly bombarded with your phone and all that entails. Now, you guys know I am looking at you through my phone, okay? I have a computer right here on my desk. I use my phone. My phone is a tool, and I love the technology that we have. But I will tell you, I like being unplugged too. I like being in nature. I like sitting down with an old-fashioned paper book. Okay, I like the way the pages feel. I like the way that I can highlight it and all that kind of stuff. So you need to unplug from time to time so that you tap into your creativity. Okay, so you want to know that if you are back in nature, that helps with that. So they did another study, and this was at the Heil-Mealey University, and this is in Edinburgh, and they had participants who had their brains monitored continually using a mobile EEG machine, okay, while they were walking through an urban green space, and had the brain EEG readings indicating lower frustration, greater engagement and arousal, and higher meditation levels while in the green area. Okay? The lower engagement and arousal is what allows the attention to be restored, encouraging a more open and meditative mindset. So we need to be able to have that, okay? It is this kind of brain activity, sometimes referred to as the brain default network, that is tied to creative thinking, said Strayer. He currently is repeating his earlier 2012 study with a new group of hikers, okay? And they are measuring the EEG and salivary, can't say these words, salivary cortisol levels before, during, and after a 3-day hike. Early analysis and EEG readings support the theory that hiking in nature seems to reset people's attention networks and engage their default network. So this is something really, really good. Some people think that, putting aside the technology and getting out of the house and going into nature is kind of a waste of time because you're not doing something. We don't always need to be doing. We are not human doings. We are human beings. We need to be. For me to be my best self, then I need to be fully present with you. I need to have my creativity going. I need not to be burnt out. I need not to be stressed. Hi, Mom, I love you too. Okay, so if your brain, right, if you've been using your brain to multitask, and most of us do most of the day, you set that aside and go for a walk without all your gadgets. You let the prefrontal cortex recover, says Strayer. And this is when we see these bursts in creativity, problem solving, and feelings of well-being. So you can do all the supplements you want, you can do all the essential oils you want, you can do all of the gluten-free, made from scratch, home cooking you want. And I love that, and I applaud that, and I think we need to do that. But we also need to write in our calendars, I need to go for a walk. I remember, and Renee, I know you're online. I remember years ago when I worked with Renee, and she would tell us when it was lunchtime, go outside, go sit in the sunshine. It's a beautiful day. And she was so right. She was absolutely so right. And those are some things that I need to remember today because we just don't take the time to go out there. Yes, you do need to take your phone for safety reasons. I totally get that. I totally applaud that. But I know that you are wise and you're not connected and you do spend time with other things. Okay, so I think this is the last thing, maybe the last thing. Nature may help you to be more kind and generous. And do we not need that in our society today? So maybe if your spouse and your kiddos are being kind of gritchy, maybe you guys need to go on a walk. Maybe if your coworker is being gritchy, y'all just need to go outside to the park and have a coffee break outside, get away from the technology so that you can reconnect and reboot those areas so you're not gritchy. So this is an example of a study. Okay, the researchers asked people to fill out a survey about their emotions while sitting at a table where there were more or less beautiful plants. Afterwards, the participants were told that the experiment was over and they could leave. But if they wanted to, they could volunteer and make paper cranes for a relief effort for a program in Japan. The number of cranes they made did not make a difference. Okay, it was not a measure of what they were trying to do. So the research showed, now this is kind of cool. The research showed that the participants who sat at a beautiful table with beautiful, beautiful plants, they stayed longer and they made more cranes than the people that sat at the less beautiful plants. Now, this article does not give me any photos, but I am creative and I am imaginative. So I'm thinking, this is a study in Japan, so I don't kind of know what flowers are in Japan, so y'all just humor me. But looking at my brain, if I had a little bonsai tree, which has pretty shape, but really not a lot of color because it's all green, but then I had this beautiful floral arrangement, I'm going to gravitate to the floral arrangement, and it's going to be more beautiful subjectively to me. And what they found is that the participants that were in the more beautiful settings stayed longer, interacted more, and produced more of the paper cranes for the people that were in need than the people, maybe it was a cactus, maybe it was something that, I don't know, something that was less beautiful, but it was still some kind of a plant over on this side. They, as soon as the experiment were over, they got up and they left, and they didn't do any of that. Okay, so that's just kind of a crazy thing, that it makes you more productive and it makes you kinder and gentler. Okay, so this is kind of a cool thing. Nature increases your positive emotion, perhaps by triggering awe, a feeling akin to wonder, with a sense of being part of something bigger. So if we are training our children, and I know that we've got a lot of young moms on here, and I'm not addressing everyone, because then I would lose my train of thought. But if we want kinder and gentler children, don't we need to take them out? Don't we want them to be kind? Don't we want them to be productive? Don't we want them to be empathetic? If they are in their own little world, in their own device, on just there, they're not going to be empathetic. They're not going to be looking out for everybody else. Okay, fifth, and this is the last one, and I have about 5 minutes, okay? So nature makes you feel more alive, okay? With all the benefits of being out in nature, it's probably no surprise that something about nature makes us feel more alive and vital. Being outdoors gives us energy, makes us happier, makes us ready to believe that everyday stresses in our overscheduled lives can be resolved, opens the door to creativity, and helps us to be kinder to others. Now, I'm just going to tell you, when we went away this weekend, of course, we had to fly because we live in Texas and they live in Washington. And when I woke up on 4th of July morning in the mountains and I went into the kitchen area, the people that were up before me were already outside at a table having a cup of coffee. And I went outside and I just sat there for 4 hours drinking in the beautiful countryside, the cool air, the conversation. Nobody was on a cell phone. Nobody was on a device. We were just loving each other and talking to each other. And I mean, 4 hours was not long enough for me to do that. And my heart pined every day to go out and sit and be among nature. Why is that? Because I live downtown, and there's not just very many trees right in my little area, and there's no mountains in my little area. I have lots of flowers. I have flowers for a reason, and I didn't know that maybe I was stimulating my creativity and that kind of thing. So hopefully this has given you a lot of time or information so that you can live your best life. I applaud technology. I love technology. I'm so glad I live in a time where there is technology, because it makes my life really easy. Now, remember, I'm old enough to remember what it is to go to the library and have to go through the card catalog and all that kind of stuff, right? That takes a lot of time. Today, information is just right there, and I am a reader. I am a voracious reader, and I read. I always have been. But it is time, and we have to make time to reconnect with nature so that we can be our own best self. So, hope that's given you food for thought. It is the weekend. Make sure that you unplug. Be mindful to unplug. I would say set a goal of at least an hour a day just being unplugged and being in nature. If that's you have to sit on your porch, if that's the best you can do, that's the best you can do, but at least you're outside in the fresh air. You can do it late, you can do it early when it's not 100 degrees. Hopefully we're not going to have too much rain. We do pray for the people that are in the path of Hurricane Barry or Storm Barry. I'm not even sure what its category is right now, but we're praying for that. And do something good for yourself. Pop in the comments on Monday how much time you were able to decompress and be out in nature and be disconnected. Love you guys. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you. I honor you. And I hope you have a great, great weekend. Take care.